Well, joining me now to talk more about everything which happened in the Premier League this weekend with Manchester United and Arsenal with their 1-1 draw in particular. I'm joined by the Manchester United correspondent for Goal.com. Kris Voakes joins me on Sportuccino this morning. Good morning, Kris. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, Kris. Well, we're probably both doing a bit better than Jose Mourinho this morning. He looked pretty frustrated at the end of that 1-1 draw against Arsenal, didn't he?
Yeah, he did a little bit. He tried to kind of play it up a little bit in the press conference and say that he's very happy with his players, that they did everything he asked of them. That in the last three home games, they basically played well enough to win 9 points, and they've only got three. The draws against Stoke and Burnley were very similar in a lot of ways to the Arsenal game. Obviously, a little bit tighter against Arsenal, but he seems to be seeing the same pattern at the moment, and they're just for that little second losing concentration, and it's costing them, and it's frustrating to him. He said it's going to kind of happen because, for instance, Marcus Rashford made the mistake which led to Arsenal's goal on Saturday. That's going to happen with a 19-year-old, and his positives far outweigh his negatives. So he was a little bit more kind of accepting of it in the press conference. But yeah, looking at the way that the league table is forming at the moment, that was just 6 big points that United have lost at home recently.
Yeah, you mentioned that about Rashford. The 2 points I want to bring up on that goal is, firstly, Rashford, do you think he's better in a number nine position rather than when they put him out wide? I know he started the game there and then they made changes and they moved him out left. But for me, I think he's far more effective in a number nine than he is in those wide positions. And then, because, when he's in those wide positions, those things could happen.
Yeah, the difficulty with him playing number nine, all of his best qualities, I think, are as a number nine. The way that he pounces on chances around the 6 and 18-yard box. A lot of his kind of build-up play work in the channels is very good, but at times outside of the box, he's not quite as effective. So if they're leading 1-0 late on and they need somebody just holding the ball up in a Zlatan Ibrahimovic type way, then Rashford is not necessarily that type of player. But then neither really is Wayne Rooney. So you could have had either of them up front and might have found the same difficulties in those respects. Certainly out wide, he's really shown that he can adapt to that position. He really struggled playing as a deep kind of wide player against Liverpool, notably in the Europa League last year, and rarely played there again for United under Louis van Gaal. Under Mourinho, he's played wide more often. He's become better in that position, but certainly at the age of 19, he's still learning about top flight football in the very first place, and particularly about playing in that wider role.
With that in mind, could you say that Phil Jones was as much to blame for that goal?
Yeah, kind of. It's one of those for 73 minutes, Arsenal offered absolutely nothing up front, and it was bizarre looking at the team sheet when you saw Phil Jones and Marcus Rocco being Manchester United's two centre halves, clearly a makeshift back four. Mourinho has spoken for the last 2 weeks about how he's short on defenders, and Jones and Rocco shouldn't really be playing at centre back. And yet Arsenal put Sanchez as their number nine, and somebody who's not really going to mix it up and force mistakes out of the two defenders and turn the defenders around and hassle them. Olivier Giroud really should have been playing from the start. And as soon as he came on, yes, that was the first shot on goal, the one in the 89th minute when he scored with the header. But he just showed in that one action what he could have been doing for much of the game, causing confusion. Jones got the wrong side of competing centre back and striker and allowed Giroud in. And it was just, that's what Arsenal could have been doing to Manchester United for the full game. And it was a surprise that Wenger took away that possibility by not playing Giroud. And we saw that Jones, with one little switch off, can cost United.
Yeah, no Bailey yesterday, no Smalling, which I think is Mourinho's preferred pairing. But he did have Daley Blind on the bench. I know he brought Blind on, but why doesn't he fancy him at centre half? Because he was forming a pretty decent pairing with Smalling last season, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's just the thing with Blind is he's not the quickest and he's not the most natural centre half. He's very good at anticipating and seeing what's going to happen ahead of him. So he'll often drop into positions where he can see that things are going to develop. But if he doesn't quite get that right, then he was really exposed. And I think the way that Rocco has played actually at centre back recently has been quite promising. So he wouldn't really want two left-footed centre halves. Jones was back available, which is why he's gone with Jones. And then Blind was kind of not entirely fit for the Swansea City trip a couple of weeks ago, and they did okay at centre half then. So he went with the same two guys against Arsenal, and it kind of came back to bite him a little bit at the end there.
And I would assume that they'll start making changes for Thursday's game.
Yeah, as much as he's said, he's kind of pandered to the talk of what the Europa League can do recently. He's spoken about how it's a window, a trip to the Champions League for the Europa League winners. But it's not his first priority. He will make changes. He spoke about Luke Shaw on Friday about how he's back available again, and he will play some part in the games to come. That was clearly a nod towards the Europa League and then the League Cup game against West Ham coming up as well. So, yep, there will be changes. He spoke at the start of the season about waiting for September when the cup competition started coming up so that he could actually use some of his players a lot more. And we'll see that again on Thursday. I think he'll make plenty of changes for the game against Feyenoord at Old Trafford.
Well, they've got a lot of work to do. They're 5 points behind Spurs, who are 5th, United in 6th. That makes them 6 points behind Arsenal right now. Should he be concentrating a bit more on the Europa League, looking for that Champions League spot, or do you think there's enough in this side to be a top 4 side?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? Because as he rightly pointed out, they were very close to picking up 6 more points in the last 3 home games, and that would have put them right back in the running really for the top 4. But that being said, they didn't get those points, and they showed deficiencies in each of those games. I think if they fall any further adrift, then a slight change of focus might be the right way to go. But after Feyenoord, and then they play Zorya away in December, they've got 2.5 months before they have to deal with the Europa League again. So I think this stage of the season, having just seen off the last international break, we've got a 4-month run of club football now. This is always a huge part of the season. It's the meat of the season now. And I think United have got to really have a good run now in the Premier League. Mourinho has spoken about this is a great opportunity to get all of his players together, get them working the way that he wants them to work. Obviously, it's still early in his reign in terms of actually turning the squad around and getting them playing the style of football he wants. So if he can actually put that into effect over the next few months, then United could still have a great say. I think 4th place is their target now, and I think a good run in the Europa League to go with that and kind of give them that second option of Champions League football. I think that's where United's targets are lying at the very moment.
Let's quickly mention a couple of the other games in the English Premier League, Kris. You mentioned about the difference that Giroud made, but surely Spurs they're light and day, aren't they? When Harry Kane is fit, they're a much better side, aren't they? And he proved that on Saturday.
Yeah, and it was strange because in the first half, it was hard to see how Spurs were going to break any side down. There was no movement. Whenever Spurs had the ball in kind of the fullback positions, the 2 fullbacks just had nothing available to them much at the time. And you just wondered how Spurs were going to break through. Then in the second half, there were just little cracks in West Ham. And after Spurs had come back the first time with Harry Winks, there was always that hope that they'd come back a second time. But Spurs just kept plugging away, and Kane just scores goals. He doesn't look like somebody who you would think would be a great goal scorer, but he really is. And I think it's the second year running, isn't it, that he scored 2 against West Ham in that game now.
Yeah, he's doing really well. I'm talking about people who scored 2 goals. Yaya Toure returning for Manchester City. Were you as surprised as I was, and probably many people were, to see him in that lineup?
A little bit. I think after the apology recently, there was always the opportunity for him to come in. Obviously, they've got the Champions League in midweek. This was a day really when, if Guardiola was ever going to use him, there was a good chance he was going to use him this time. But to score 2 goals, that's the story, isn't it? That's the way. That was one of the ways that it was going to develop. It was either going to be that Toure wasn't going to play again for City, or he was going to come back and have a real effect and to basically win the 3 points for City and keep them close in that title race. It's a great response by Toure. Obviously, what's happened means that this is likely to be his last season at Man City, no matter what happens. But yeah, he's going to score goals in the meantime because he's had a great record in the Premier League. And why is that going to change, really?
It just all feels a bit petty at times. You go back to a couple of years ago when he was complaining about how they didn't celebrate his birthday with a cake and everything like that.
Yeah.
And now Guardiola saying he won't play until his agent says sorry. It was a great response from him. But then I think we even saw that last season from Yaya Toure. When he's up for it, when he fancies it, he's still a world beater. But it's getting it out of him every single week. And if Guardiola can potentially do that, it's all very interesting. One last question from you, Kris. Chelsea, are they? It's been a good run recently, but are they going to get unstuck in the next couple of games? I believe they've got Spurs and Manchester City coming up, and that could really decide their season because they obviously had those defeats against Arsenal and Liverpool.
Yeah, it's too early to call Chelsea, I think, in a lot of ways. Obviously there's still a couple of weeks of Champions League football to come, but after those, Chelsea don't have that benefit that they've had so far of being able to pretty much put out the same team and have no midweek football. They're going to have the same pressures and strains as everyone else for a couple of months, and that also could be a difficulty for them. I'm still not completely convinced that they can pull it off over a 38-game season. They're obviously in a good run now. They're a team that will punish you for your mistakes, as they did on Sunday against Middlesbrough as well. Middlesbrough were very tight and played pretty well across the back four, and obviously Valdez was in good form in goal as well, but they just had that one lapse and Diego Costa made them pay. They're going to be able to do that to teams, but like you say, 2 big games coming up, and then after that, they don't have the benefit that they've currently been making the most of, which is no midweek football and that ability to keep things ticking over and on a 7-day cycle. When that comes around, it's going to be interesting to see how many points Chelsea pick up compared to everyone else.
Yeah, we'll be watching closely at all of that. Kris, thank you so much for your time this morning on Sportuccino. Just quickly before you go, let us know how we can continue to follow you on social media and follow exactly what you're up to.
Yeah, just follow my Facebook page, search for Kris Voakes, or it's facebook.com/Kris Voakes goal, and on Twitter @Kris Voakes.
Brilliant. Well, Kris, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on Sportuccino this morning.
No worries. Great to speak to you, Richard.